Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. Got another Master Duel video for you, coming at you with some gameplay for Fiendsmith Yubel. Of course, we gotta come back to this deck now that 3 of its starters have been lifted from the semi-limited list. We're gonna start the going first game against Maliss here, opening a few copies of Dark Beckoning Beast, as well as Yubel and Fiendsmith's Lacrima. But before I do anything, I'm gonna want to put back the Yubel and one of my Beckoning Beasts to summon out the Phantom of Yubel. This remains, I think, one of Yubel's greatest strengths in this meta in particular, is the ability to, before your opponent can even take an action during your main phase, commit a monster negate to the board. So yeah, any hand where that's possible, we definitely want to be leading with that. Now, my opponent's going to try to Ash Blossom the Dark Beckoning Beast, but of course, rather than use my Phantom, I'm going to use my Crossout Designator. Now, here is their Max C, which of course is going to get hit with the Phantom of Yubel negate. And thankfully that seems to be it for the time being for my opponent's hand traps, but still, Maxi and Ash Blossom are two pretty terrifying hand traps to have to encounter on turn 1. Glad we were able to play through them here. The reason I decided to lead with the Dark Beckoning Beast normal summon instead of the Lacrima is because the Beckoning Beast normal summon can lead to Fiendsmith plays while still putting up some extra bodies. Basically, I'm just going to end up special summoning the Lacrima from my hand more than likely anyway. Yeah, so we'll go into Moon. The opponent did end up hitting us with a Droll and Lockbird, which does, of course, mean that we're not able to get our Search for the rest of the turn, or Searches, rather. So I can't actually activate the opening of the Spirit Gates, because it searches on activation. So, were it not for that, I could have potentially used the, effect to discard Lacrima and revive an extra body here, on top of course, also getting an additional search in bodies, but it's really not that big of a deal in the long run. Like, yeah, at this point, I'm only doing, Fiendsmith stuff, basically, but my opponent's only going to be on 3 cards after they draw for a turn, so yeah, basically we can end on 2 points of interaction here. The Phantom of Yubel being able to stop any monster effect, whereas Desiree can stop the effect of any card on the field. 2 points of interaction going into my opponent's 3-card hand is still a pretty good position to be in. So, like I said, I'm not too concerned here, even though we did get hit with those hand traps. They're going to go for the Allure of Darkness, and I'm actually going to use the Fiendsmith's Desiree here. That might seem a little bit weird, but my thought process was if my opponent's got a finite amount of cards in hand, and I can already stop a monster effect, I might as well stop a spell effect, especially when it's going to advance not only their hand and get them more, cards to make plays with, but also banish a Maliss monster. Looks like they're chaining the Bestial Baldrake here, which is fine by me. I'm not going to negate it with Phantom. I'd rather save that for a more impactful effect. Plus, I can negate the Baldrake with the Desiree for whatever that's worth. Their last card, though, ended up being Triple Attack, which looks pretty bad for me, but is not really that big a deal in the grand scheme of things, because if they go to use Desiree on my Phantom like they are here, I can simply chain the Phantom, and then pop a Spirit from my deck. Spirit will summon the Yubel, and now they can't just, freely swing into my Yubel here. They're going to end up linking off their Baldrake with my Desiree in order to make Little Knight, but this is still fine, because I can chain the Desiree effect here. And now my opponent's in a position where they either have to choose to let their Desiree, or not their Desiree, their SP gets sent by my Desiree, or they can chain Little Knight's effect, but then they'll save my Yubel from getting banished here. So they ultimately chose to banish my Yubel while having their Little Knight sent, which is fine by me because now they have nothing, and we not only have the opening of the Spirit Gates we already had, but now we even have an Engraver that we top decked to work with as well, which is just going to make things all the easier. We do have a Spirit of the Yubel in the graveyard, which means I can revive it with the opening here. My plan was to, basically just start going into getting enough bodies on board to start looking to just get some damage out. OTKing into an empty board with Yubel is actually a little bit difficult sometimes, because I'm not playing Access Code, which would normally, really help you in doing that. But, I mean, even if we don't OTK, I can still certainly set up a bunch of negates, like an Appaloosa, among other things. And then my opponent, again, is just in straight-up top deck mode. So, yeah. All right, there is our first duel. Let's go and check out the next one here. Okay, here's a duel against a pure Mitsurugi deck. We're going second for this one. And this will be quite a back-and-forth game. I think it was 7 turns, if I remember what I was just looking at here. Definitely not a bad hand. We got Fua and Ash Blossom going second. Can't complain that on top of a bunch of starters here. Well, 2 of them. We got the D-Lotus and the Tract. I'm going to chain the Fulos to the Mitsurugi Ritual, and it will end up resolving here. Now, they're going to be summoning from hand, but figured I would get the Fulos online regardless. Unfortunately for me, they do have a Murakumo in hand, so that's going to come down straight away. It's going to make my Ash Blossom a little more awkward here. I'm still going to chain it, especially because I get to use it on Saji. They really should have gone Chain Link 1 Saji, Chain Link 2 Aramasa, I think. Well, I guess it depends on what they're trying to get, but I assume they wanted to go for prayers. They end up adding a Futsu off of the Aramasa here. Gonna use the Sharvara that I sent to set the Unchained A-Bomb. Or, I mean, what's this trap card called again? Abominable Chamber. That's what it is. Okay. So we got the Aramasa Revive off the prayers, as well as the Murakumo Summon. They grabbed the Mirror as well, which is another great way for them to dodge my Fulos here. Yeah, I was thinking they're going to send the Habakiri in order to summon that Futsu no Mitama there. So yeah, my opponent played very well. I mean, to be fair, their hand was very well set up to play around my Fulos here. Looks like they are going to give me 1 draw by making IP with their own Fulos. And unfortunately for me, that 1 draw ended up being Max C. God, if they had just done an extra deck summon sooner, it could have been so much better. Now, I decided to draw phase Max C on my turn because they have the Futsu no Mitama up, which of course will special summon from the graveyard every time I do, which would have given me a draw. But they're actually going to use the Great Purification, which is fine by me because they're going to tribute the Murakumo to do it, and now I can use Called By on the Murakumo to make sure that it doesn't come back. So now I don't have to deal with that negate. I will still have to deal with this IP though, as well as all the bodies that the Futsu no Mitama is going to summon here. I decided to lead with the Tract because that doesn't commit my normal summon. In case they had something like an Ash Blossom, they might use that here instead of against my D-Lotus. And I'd kind of rather the D-Lotus resolve than the... Well, not even kinda. I would definitely rather the D-Lotus resolve than my Fiendsmith stuff necessarily, so... Yeah, unfortunately, like I said before, with each of my special summons there, Futsu no Mitama is going to get to revive a monster from the graveyard, which will in turn give them a search. Definitely not ideal for me. Getting a Habakiri, which remember did not use its effect during the last turn, meaning they can do it again. Okay, I'm going to activate the Requiem, and they're going to chain IP Masquerade into here. We're going for the Engraver, and then looks like they're going to go into the Appaloosa. Pre-material Appaloosa to be specific here. Alright, going for the Requiem F, they're going to chain the Appaloosa here, which does give me an opportunity to out it at this point. I'm going to flip up Abominable Chamber. I did this to get an extra body to battle with, but it kind of is irrelevant because they're just going to get an extra body off the Mitama anyway, but I guess if nothing else, it's a little more damage. Not that it really matters, but the main thing that matters there is getting the Appaloosa off the board. Gonna pivot into more Fiendsmith stuff here, going for the Sequence F. And they are gonna Nibiru here, so I was also kind of trying to see if they had any more hand traps. Now, remember, I still have not committed my normal summon at this point. Yeah, unfortunately, Nibiru is a tribute. As always, which means the Mitsurugi stuff just gets to search and revive. But hey, I still get to go normal summon D-Lotus. Unfortunately, I did already have to battle here, which is really, really rough for me because if I hadn't have battled, or if I hadn't have had to have battled to get over the Appaloosa, then I could have been looking at an OTK potentially with the Nightmare Pain here. But alas, it's not meant to be at this point. Yeah, I could have summoned the Terror Incarnate, had the Phantom, revived the Spirit. Pretty easily gone for an OTK if I had not battled already. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go for the SP to banish the Great Purification to stop follow-up. And now I'm going to move straight to end phase because that's actually going to let me pop the board with Terror Incarnate. Like, just going based off what's in my extra deck and knowing what I can and can't have access to, I figured at this point my best bet to hopefully try to get myself into a better game state was to use the Terror Incarnate board wipe, because like, yeah, I could try to set up a Napalooza with some negates or something like that, but then my opponent still has like 4 or 5 monsters in play to make plays with, and a Napalooza is really not going to do too much in a situation like that. So I figured my best bet for trying to win this game at this point was just going for, like I said, the Terror Incarnate board wipe. Now, granted, I know they still have a ton of plays based on all their searches on the last turn there, and they do still get to recycle the Great Purification with the Kusanagi here. But at the very least, I don't have to deal with the Great Purification Graveyard Revive and then Tribute effect. That's why I decided to Little Knight and banish that as opposed to one of the cards in the field. Because again, I was going to board wipe them anyway. Alright, they're going for the Prayers, the Revive, the Search for the Mirror off the Saji. Overlaying for a rank 4 here, which ends up being Dugaris. Dugaris going to get the Draw 2 effect here. Draw 2, discard 1. Discarding the pre-prep makes sense from the opponent because, of course, they have already searched their mirror. And they're going to use Dynamundo to get over my Terra Incarnate. This was kind of like my one angle I was shooting for a little bit here, was hoping that maybe they wouldn't have a clean way to deal with the Terra Incarnate. Of course, if they choose to battle into it, they simply take the damage, but nah, at this point, things aren't looking too great. I do still have some graveyard effects, but they have a call by, so they're going to use that on my Engraver here. Pretty far from ideal. Honestly, even if my Engraver had gotten the Revive, like, they can just do Dynamundo's effect anyway. And actually, that is what they're going to do anyway. Dynamundo F is going to revive the Futsu no Mitama, which, as I start to special summon monsters, will in turn be able to start special summoning Mitsurugi cards from the graveyard. And they also banished my Nightmare Pain, which means I can't just battle, you know, into their stuff and get damage in. Their draw phase is skipped with little consolation as they're going to make a second Dynamundo here. Going to try to shuffle back my Spirit. We're going to use the Imperm to negate that, but one of their 2 cards in hand is going to end up being the Crossout Designator. Now, I've been playing from behind pretty much this whole time up to this point, but this is really going to solidify me as falling too far behind to catch back up. Not even really able to make a Phantom of Yubel with the stuff in my graveyard, unfortunately. Just going to have to pass right back over to my opponent, who is going to only need 200 more points of damage in order to find lethal here. And they're going to very easily find that with the Mitsurugi Mirror. They even get the Murakumo Search. Okay, they're going to do a little bit more summoning here. Getting another Summon, Search, and Revive. God. As if this deck isn't... I don't think I need to tell you this deck is broken, but... Alright, there we have it. There's that going second duel. Might have been a loss, but it was at least a pretty solid back and forth there. At least for the most part, until the very end. But we still have one more game. Let's go ahead and finish off with that one. Alright, our final duel is going to be against Argostars. It's really easy to forget in the midst of like everything else that came out that Argostars did also get some follow-up support in the latest expansion. So we're going to be taking the first turn here, and they're going to hit us with a Fuelos, which I, of course, am going to use a Called By on. And they're going to chain a Max C. Certainly not ideal for me. Although here what I'm going to do, and you might already be able to kind of see what I'm going for here, is I'm going to hit myself with my own Droll and Lockbird. And just do Fiendsmith stuff. Now, Droll and Lockbird, when it comes to playing as Yubel, it's kind of hand dependent, right? Because you do have a couple of pretty critical searches. The Nightmare Pain is definitely one of them. The Yama search for the Sharvara also does matter later on in the combo line. But because we're using the Fiendsmith engine so prominently, we can also get away with quite a bit while under the Droll and Lockbird as well. So rather than pass on an empty board with a Droll and a Max C in my hand, I'm going to trade my Droll to end on, again, if nothing else, some Fiendsmith stuff, which could be an Appaloosa, could be a Desiree, could be a Caesar. We're not playing Caesar in this build. Not quite enough room in the extra deck for it, but you could also, if you're not under Droll and Mockbird, you could go into a Muckraker as well. And then use Muckraker to, well, you would make Aerial Eater, use that to dump D-Lotus, and then Muckraker revives D-Lotus. But again, D-Lotus goes into Spirit, which goes into Nightmare Pain, but I'm under Droll, so I can't search off the Nightmare Pain. So I decided, okay, I'll settle for a 4-material Appaloosa, which against a lot of decks would be very terrifying for the opponent. Argostars does have a lot of continuous trap cards, though, so that is going to be maybe not quite as impactful for them. In any case, I decided to use Appaloosa against the first effect of Aedra here, which was the effect, oh, it's under the Typhon. So basically, I used it against the normal summon effect, which says, this turn, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of your continuous trap cards or their effects. I decided to use the Appaloosa against that, instead of, well, not instead of, in addition to the second effect, because I wanted to be able to chain Maxi to them special summoning their continuous trap cards, and or chain my Appaloosa to their effects while their monster's on the field. However, they're not going to even use the Aedra effect, they're just going to go straight for Typhon and battle over my Appaloosa here, setting 3 before passing. During end phase, I'm going to use the Lacrima, summon out the Fiendsmith's Requiem. I guess I should have done that during the end of the main phase, but I didn't want them to really interact with my stuff here. Plus, I figured I could just do this during my turn anyway. That is Requiem for Lacrima, Lacrima for the Engraver. Engraver is going to summon itself back by putting back Fiendsmith's Lacrima. Now, I'll equip the Requiem and activate Engraver to get rid of the Typhon. At this point, I'm looking to use Sequence to make Desiree this time. However, they're going to use Crackdown on my Sequence. That's fine by me. We're going to use Opening of the Spirit Gates. They're going to chain the Apophis, rather, the Swamp Deity. Embodiment of Apophis is the original one. So they negate my opening, but I still get to draw off the Maxi. And funnily enough, I actually drew Dark Beckoning Beast, which I would have searched anyway. Now, they conceded right off the bat, but I think that was an early concede. They still had a face-down card, and, like, yeah, I got some bodies on board, but I'd already gone through all my Fiendsmith stuff, so I can't even really do a ton with these 2 bodies here. But, hey, you know what? We'll definitely take the dub for sure. Anyway, let me go ahead and show you the post-banlist build here before we end off the video. Okay, so here is my current deck list for Fiendsmith Yubel. Honestly, it's pretty standard as far as like what you would expect to see here. The main differences, of course, are going to be 3 Dark Beckoning Beasts, the 3rd Opening of the Spirit Gates, and the 3rd Nightmare Throne as well. Now, those cards are all at 3. I definitely want 3 copies of each of them. Although, to be fair, I did actually consider only playing 2 Opening of the Spirit Gates anyway, because as you can see, our mid deck count's a little bit high on 42. But Opening is also a starter, so it's like, I think it's fine to, you know, be a little bit above 40 if you're just including more starters anyway. That said, I think having a second Nightmare Pain could be very, very important. This card is also a starter in its own right. You do have to have a Dark Monster to destroy, but if you do, it's full Yubel combo as well. So I'm considering going down to 2 openings and then going up to 2 Nightmare Pain as well. You could also consider a 3rd Spirit. Spirit's not a starter by itself, but certainly not bad to have in your hand a lot of the time. But I really wanted to maximize on cards that were definitely starters, and then of course hand traps as well. Extra deck, there's also quite a bit of room. As I touched on before, we're not playing Caesar, which you could definitely be using with the Fiendsmith engine. Appaloosa, funnily enough, Yubel is kind of known for turboing out Appaloosa, which, I mean, isn't really unique to Yubel. Anything playing Fiendsmith can do that. But that said, I consider Appaloosa to be highly optional in Yubel. Like, yes, on your regular end board, if you go off uninterrupted, you're going to always end on Appaloosa. That said, it's pretty rare for you to actually go off uninterrupted, and obviously we have a lot of other negates that we can end on. There's the Desiree, there's the Phantom, there's even Varadros, the Final Bringer, as well. Honestly, I would consider Varadros to be pretty highly optional. Like, it's really good. It's an Omni Negate. It's kind of the only one besides from Desiree that Yubel has access to. But the thing about Varadros is kind of like I was alluding to with Appaloosa. You're only going to summon this if your like main combo goes off uninterrupted, which does not really happen that often. I find, I don't play Yubel too often to be fair, but I find when I do play Yubel, it's very rare I actually get to summon Varadros. So I think there are plenty of flex options within both the main and the extra deck if you want to be working with some different stuff here. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for this video. Thank you as always for watching. Let's move on now to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which by the way is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.